We are live,
Okay,
boys.
I think Ben might be frozen. We may need to kick us off here.
Perfect timing. Right after the countdown.
Okay, well, for everybody
Anyways.
else that is here, I can kind of get us going. Welcome to the second episode of the Kitty Cast. Today's going to be a fun one where we kind of go back into the depths of Kitty Arcade and what it used to be. Once upon a time, it was literally called Kitty Esports, and we're excited to kind of show you how the project has evolved from the early days to where we are now, which ultimately is a product we're very, very excited and proud of. And there's Ben.
Perfect
Back.
timing on the
Andy,
connection.
holding it down. Holding it down. Sorry about that. There is a storm in Houston, and it could take any one of us offline at any second now. So, episode 2 of the Kitty Cast already off with, well, not quite a bang. All right, guys. Well, we're excited to be here today. Thanks for being here today. We're back to talk more about Kitty Arcade and the Kitty Project. Really, the story of today is more of a look back at kind of the path that we've walked to get here. But before we get into all of that, we want to open, as always, with an icebreaker. And today we're going to have a special gameplay with Lou the Cat segment. So hopefully Lou the Cat is available to talk about avatar creation. So, Lou the Cat, could you maybe walk us through some avatar stuff?
Come on, Lou the cat. You want to go lap, or you just gonna have me pick you up? Here is Lou the cat. This has been our absolute pride and joy tester of the product for the years that we've worked on it. This is an old 15-year-old cat that is at least got to be in the top 10 cats in the country at this game right now. Can duke it out with the best of the Cat Cafe kittens. So let's go ahead and pull this up and see if we can't get Lou in the game and give him a little personality. Let's see.
So while Drew is doing all this, I'll just provide a little bit of narration. Lou the Cat has been the primary test subject of Kitty Arcade for the last 2 years and change that the whole squad has been working on it. He was not a big fan of our most original product, which you guys are going to get to see a lot of today. And he's grown to be quite the fan of our product as it exists today, which we'll also show a little bit. And I see Drewski just kind of getting everything loaded up. What are you loading up, Drew, to show us?
So I'm loading up the Unity project, and the Unity project does not like to be captured by OBS window capture, so we're going to go ahead and just hit a display capture and see if we can't get display 2 on here. There you go. We'll do a
Got
little
it.
quick resizing on the fly. Flawless.
Yeah, so
Absolutely
this,
flawless.
there we go. You can walk it through from here.
Yeah, so this is just in Unity, building the project up. This is one of our more recent versions. Should get dropped off at the homestead here. Got a cute little default kitty just to start off with. Obviously able to pet the kitty at all times throughout. But this is kind of our work in progress, cat customization and creation screen. So this is something that you get greeted with kind of the second you open the app and make an account. You'll be able to make a cat and get your cat in game. Seems like we lost another one to the Houston storm, so now our cameras are going to look even better. But yeah, we got some goofy colors and things in here. But the idea is that you really want to try and get your actual cat in the game. So if you saw Lou, he's got a kind of a white base, and then you have some different layering options that you could put on him. For him, he's got a pretty large black layer. Lou, what color are your eyes? I'm not actually sure. I haven't stared deeply into your eyes. We have some different eye color options. He's a little grumpy today, so maybe we'll give him some kind of grumpy, angry eyes because they always make me laugh. And then he's got a cute little pink nose. So here we have a decent representation of Lou, and of course, got to give him his little scritchings in game and in real life simultaneously.
Lou's the quintessential cat who yells.
And then another cool thing that exists in the game is being able to, give a cat a personality. And we feel like this is really important. This really helps, kind of get your bond to your cat and give it a personality. In game, it'll translate to, certain emotes and actions that you can do in the homestead and while you play games. And so we can go through this relatively quickly. I know I've done this a few times for Lou before. You know, Lou's like, he's a solo cat. He enjoys some time alone. Um, you know, I gotta say that he could be a little bit more daring. He likes to snug and just chill a lot. Um, he's super easy. He goes with the flow. I mean, he's very quiet and submissive, even though he just rared earlier. Responds to others in an easygoing manner that is not rough or threatening. I mean, this guy is the most mellow fellow. Never been in a fight. Been attacked a couple times. Had to save him, but he's a nice boy. Spontaneous or sudden behavior. Dude, he is so par for the course. Does the same thing every day. Can he be nice? I mean, dude, this guy literally sleeps under the covers. Nicest cat you've ever met. Damages things. Nah, doesn't get physical. Scratches furniture sometimes, but not a big deal. You know, he usually doesn't get that scared. You know, he's just chilling. He's hanging out. And I'd say he's pretty calm most of the time. So Lou
the standard
is a
issue
standard issue cat. And you know what? Honestly, I'm glad it got that. You know, it could have been more severe, extreme on some of these answers, but you know, if this is a standard issue cat, then I am so glad that everybody has a potential Lou in their household ready to go.
Yeah.
It's a
So
great little.
we've got multiple different kind of archetypes of personalities based on a lot of research that Connor did, and really understanding the kind of the core archetypes of cats. And some of the other ones that exist are love bug, private investigator, um, and party animal, MVP. These are all kind of the the wide ranging personality types that apparently cats generally fall into. And one of my favorite parts of the project so far has been um, watching people as loving cat parents kind of go through this process and just the joy that they get when they are asked these questions about their cat, because I guess they don't get asked to them as often as they would like. So it's really kind of been fun to see people go through that and think about, oh, how exactly does my cat behave in that situation, or what exactly are they like, and kind of seeing them light up in the end when they get the personality class that generally kind of aligns up with their beliefs. It's always been a very fun thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for a great little product demo there, Drew. It was fun to see Lou brought to life within the game, and we'll be doing more demos like that, more kind of hands-on, touching and feeling the game stuff in the future episodes, guys. But today's discussion is really more about how we came to be what we are, where we are today, and who are we, what are we, where are we? Well, we're a small startup with one fluffy dog who's come to say hi. We've been working on developing video games for cats for the last 2 years and change, and we've got a product that we're really excited about. And as part of the effort to kind of tell the story, we wanted to use today's episode to kind of walk down memory lane and just remember some of the glory days. So we're going to start with our very first investor pitch deck. And as I was kind of going through and putting this together, it just made me so happy, remembering the early reactions we kind of got to our story, and kind of reflecting on how much our stories maybe changed, and on maybe some of the things that perhaps have been lost in the new tellings of it, where we're more about the business and the TAM and the SAM and the SOM and all of that. But anyway, here's how the story goes. Did you know that of all the creatures on Earth, that cats are the second most likely to play video games? And this is, of course, an insight that we back up by talking about the fact that there are millions of downloads for cat games already. And we can go ahead and look at our vision, which is to make the world's best cat game, one that's so good that humans will want to play too. And alongside it, we think we can launch an exciting and disruptive media product that's perfect for consumption in today's cat-loving digital world. Hello, Luda. Uh, Luda also a very important part of the Kitty Arcade family. And
Basically a cat, just a big
I
fluffy cat.
don't know what she's doing right now, but she has come to join the show. Thanks for making an appearance. So we set out to make the world's best cat game, one that's so good that he was want to play too. Let's go on to the next slide. Um, We have a badass founding team. I'm longtime esports OG, been around, know a thing or two about games and esports. Samira, my co-founder, no longer actively working on the project, but quite the hotshot marketer. She did a whole lot to help build our brand and our story. And then our developers, who you guys met in our last episode, and who I believe are three of just like the most fucking awesome devs in the universe. And I can't believe the amount of work that it takes, and I've always been so impressed by the team and their ability to kind of put it in. And then our very first investors, Mike and Amy Morheim, just the most superstar investors you could ever hope for. They've been super good to us, and they've made their sort of whole team available to us as we've gone on and approached, hard legal questions. What do I do about my finances? How do I get this contract? And they've just been our biggest advocates, not our only investors, but our first investors and the ones that allowed us to kind of go out to the world and find money and kind of realize this dream of building video games for cats. And then Matt Bryant was our very first advisor. Camby, what's the story of Matt Bryant? How did we find this guy?
Yeah, so Matt is a kind of a big shot behaviorist in Houston, Texas. We got connected with him through one of our early mentors and kind of our entrepreneurship and development journey. They just worked together in bringing a big uh, animal training and boarding facility in Houston. Right now, they actually primarily work on training dogs, but the methodology that he uses is really, really kind of well renowned and successful, and he has a ton of insight on. He kind of can use that experience, have a ton of insight on the behavior of cats as well. So he was one of the first people that we asked of, hey, is this kind of direction of stimulation for cats through a digital medium? Like, is that a realistic thing? And he did some preliminary research on his own and was very, very excited by it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we actually had Matt take some of the cat games that are out there and just test them with cats that he had around his facility or that were owned by people that were close to him. And we wanted to know if cats would play games, right? We knew that cat games had been downloaded. Actually, go ahead and show the next slide. And that video might even work, right? Yes, there's a market for cat games, right? There are a handful of cat games that do have millions of downloads, and we thought that none of them were very compelling, that we could do it better. And our big innovation was going to be this idea of multiplayer, right? So this is a pitch deck. So next we talk about our market opportunities. TAM, SAM, and SOM. That's total available market, serviceable available market, and serviceable obtainable market. How many people can you go out there and win, right? And so, yeah. Wait, did I get it wrong? Did I have it backwards? Um, anyway, obtainable, addressable, and total available, like in the world, right? So there's well over 100 million cats living in households around the world. Our initial argument was like, there's 1.8 billion gamers on the planet, and there's 600 million cats, right? We can grow the gamer pie by a third. We had these kind of like outlandish. I don't know, catchphrases that we would throw around, because we really, that we do believe it, that cats are gamers, and that we can service that consumer, right? And there's a ton of them. Then there's the most well-designed slide of all time, right? Where do we sit in the landscape? Well, no one's ever made a multiplayer cat game before, so we're going to be the world's first high-quality competitive multiplayer cat game. We're comparing ourselves to games like Fruit Ninja and Frisky's Catfishing 2, which you've probably downloaded if you have a cat and a tablet. Um, Here's a quote from Kevin Lynn, who would eventually also become one of our investors. No one's ever made a AAA cat game. And the way he said it was like, huh. So no one's ever made a AAA cat game. It was like a aha moment for him. And then a promise of online multiplayer was next. We dreamed of a tablet game where you could play against other cats. We backed it up with some of Matt Bryan's research on the following slide. Drewski, I think you can just go ahead and hit the next one, where we get into the science. And Matt estimated that like 35% of cats, about a third, will just naturally engage with a tablet. And this becomes a really important like stat that drives us for most of our early development until we start running into some questions in testing. And then we had a very basic monetization strategy. We're going to monetize in app. We're going to make sponsorships and partnerships. And eventually, yes, we're going to do products and merch. And that was our early pitch. And this was what is this timeline? This is way back at the end of 2020.
We missed this mark by a
So
little bit, I think, but
yeah, I would say season two content expansion is about 2 years late. Uh, unfortunately. Um, and what did we set out to raise? We set out to raise $600,000. We did raise $600,000. And yeah, that was the very original Kitty Esports investor pitch. We called it Kitty Esports back then. A couple of good slides down here. I see you mousing over. This was the
yeah, I love this one.
the big idea. And unfortunately, this video is not working, but it's just like fish move around on screen, and when you tap the fish, a little fighting game happens. Right. This was the foundation. And the
Right. The
last.
the initial idea with this was basically, okay, yes, Friskies is very simple, but it works for cats playing. How can we kind of creatively spice that up? And the ultimate conclusion was, let's just turn that into a controller for cats, right? So every time they touch a fish, it's like hitting the A button on a controller. What we did specifically here was, okay, well, the green fish is the A button, and then the red fish is the B button, right? So kind of just creating a controller for cats where they just understand that they're just hitting the same, the inputs that they have on games already, and it's really just meant to kind of trigger their prey drive and their engagement, but then it can translate into something that's much more compelling, deep, and visually stimulating for the cat parent, all as kind of an incentive for the cat parents to want to play it. So that was kind of the original idea behind it.
Yeah, yeah, and we had this. We talked to a ton of behaviorists from all around the country about this idea, and then we got all sorts of different insights, and from what kind of colors we should use to, oh well, you can actually train the cat to do it this way or that way, and it was um, I think all very interesting. So what do you guys think when you kind of look back on that old pitch and remember it and reflect on where we are now versus what this laid out?
Uh,
Yeah, for me, it's one of those things that is a great idea. It makes sense when you say it out loud. It sounds cohesive. You can see the picture it's trying to paint. And then now I just have the additional knowledge of years plus worth of testing and actually putting it into the hands of potential users. And now I kind of understand the shortcomings that it ultimately had. But seeing that initial vision and really where we're at, like this screen we're looking at right here, right? An adaptive controller for cats. Okay, we actually ended up making that, and that's what we have now. It's just actually the controller is something that is much more engaging for our user, which is the cat. And the toy is the thing that kind of served that. The interactive toy is actually the best controller, and not really the screen tablets. So it's interesting to see. It's like the specifics of the tech maybe has changed, but the overall story, maybe some of the obviously like the Kitty Esports brand into Kitty Arcade branding is also kind of morphed. But I don't know. It's interesting. It doesn't stray too far away. We've just kind of through the process of testing and iterating have found like the actual product and experience that needs to exist to really execute this story.
yeah, I'd very much agree with your take on that. I think something else that comes to mind when I look at this old deck is just this kind of mentality that we had starting off of we know how to make games. We're going to approach this like we're going to make a video game, right? And we're going to go through a similar process as you would for any kind of mobile game development. And over the years that we've worked on this, we realize it's just a completely different project than that. And you touched on it a little bit, but once we actually got to start playing with cats and seeing how they react and behave, it's not as simple as, hey, there's some fish on screen and cats will hit the fish, and when they hit the fish, we can do all this crazy cool stuff. It's like it's a challenge just to get them to hit the fish in the first place. And to your point of switching from tablet to toy, like, is this thing that they're touching built for them? Does it make sense? Are they going to engage with it consistently enough to have a game that works? And at the time we are just a little naive, like didn't have any idea of that pitfall and the challenges that were going to be associated with that. And where we're sitting now, like we have a ton of knowledge on that subject and have been building directly to not necessarily counter it, but to account for the way that a cat would play and the way that a person wants to play with a cat.
Yeah, and one last quick thing I'll say is that the 35% stat ended up being a little bit misleading because it kind of correctly said that about 35% of cats will play with this thing on a baseline, but it didn't really account for how long would they play it or how engaged with the how long in two senses, right? Like how long do they play at a time, and then also how long do they play over time, right? Were things that stat didn't necessarily shed light on, and then that's what we learned through our testing was um, the longevity of play after a couple of days was extremely difficult to achieve. So it's just interesting because this type of data wasn't openly accessible for us, like data on how often cats play games. We had to figure that out ourselves, and we ultimately kind of did.
And it's a huge
Yeah.
difference when the cat touches it, once or twice in a 5 minute span versus actually sitting down, hitting it multiple times, and be able to play and complete a game that has, some mechanics associated with it.
Yeah. So Drew, before we look at this string out, I think we should probably look at the gym drop
Oh yeah, you want to go
video.
full throwback?
Um, but even kind of before that, just I want to react to a few things you guys are saying. Like number one, as I look back, like I'm always struck by how actually kind of close we are to the original mark. Um, like your point about adaptive controller can be, I think is pretty spot on. I think as I look back on the whole project, I often regret not starting work on the toy stuff sooner because I feel like that was just such a huge piece
Yeah.
of figuring it out, making it all work um, it just took us so long to get to it.
Yeah.
Um, what I will say is, one of the things that always has stuck with me. Yeah, Matt's 35% stat, a little misleading, and certainly like the kind of play that you get and the type of engagement and what is the outcome. Like this idea of like two cats playing live on a tablet really ultimately proved to be the one that was like not very realistic. That I'm going to set a tablet down in two different locations and two different cats are going to play at the same time and it's going to be anything close to compelling, right? Like it's just that part um, never kind of tested out the way we wanted it to. However, I do question whether or not it would have made sense for us to just like release some kind of a tablet game and then build into toy, right? Like as we kind of go through the rest of the story here and like we sort of show different versions of the game at different points, it just becomes like more and more I feel more powerfully convinced. Oh man, this we could have released this, right?
Mhm.
Certainly not this first thing we're going to show, right? Because because really the foundation I want to lay down is we set out to make a tablet game, a touchscreen game, and uh, I think Drew, you're the one that said it. Like no one ever really like was super at research. It seemed to be that no one was ever really very deliberate about designing a thought out, fleshed out game for cats, right? Like there were a few things out there, but it was kind of just like a menu screen and then a thing moving around. And we felt like we could take that idea further, right? We can take this idea of cats will swipe at a thing that's moving around, and we can just add layers to it. And we thought that would be sick, right? And so we got to work, right? And first we made this kind of like gym drop abomination. So let's look at the gym drop version of Kitty Esports.
Yeah, so this
So
is
this,
is super early in development, and this was us, trying to test out some of these ideas again, trying to approach it like a more normal game. So we have kind of four test characters here that, and you notice the whole game's in 2D. That's going to be important later as we show some different versions of this. But the idea is like a conventional video game. You have these different characters that have different abilities tied to whatever mechanic or kind of meta that we're trying to build for them. Again, the cats have no idea about what your character's abilities are, but the idea is that the human kind of knows and gets to decide, and maybe your cat plays one way or another. Was our thought at the time. If they hit more inputs, maybe the monk would be better. If they're a little bit more sporadic, maybe they luck into some good combo with the pirate. But you can see, again, very deliberate human game design of buffs and debuffs and status effects and things like that for the different characters' moves. And so as we actually get into the game, similar to when we are kind of showing off this idea of the adaptive controller, that's what this game is. So you have inputs flying around. Whenever you touch an input, it'll drop a gem. into the bottom left, and if you get multiple, it'll combine them, and once it resolves, it'll cast a spell. And I don't know, Campbell, if you want to start kind of speaking to some of the game design and like why we made some of these decisions, like why are we doing
Yeah.
a gem drop? Why not just cast it when you hit it? Why do we have this many
Yeah.
inputs? Go ahead.
Yeah, there was gosh, I mean there was so much that went into this behind the scenes to make this design work. One big thing for us early on was we recognized the sporadicness of how often cats would actually hit these things. So an early kind of design philosophy of ours was, okay, well, every single time a cat does hit something, it needs to be impactful. Um, but in a fighting sense, it was then difficult to translate that to spells on the screen that was actually still kind of understandable and followable as a person, right? What I mean by that is, okay, so if a cat were to hit one, two, three things really quickly, well, how do we visualize one, two, three spells casting without it being kind of a cacophony right off the bat? Um, and so that was one element of it. Another element was we were always kind of wanting a little bit more um, kind of the ability to build combos was always a big desire. So combining those two things together, we kind of resulted in this gem drop mechanic, which was okay, well, every single time the cat does do an input, something does happen, as in it just kind of stashes that move, aka one of the gems dropping. But the time for that character to actually send over that spell is delayed by, the timing it takes for the gem to drop to the bottom, for the timing it takes for the spell to cast, and all of that. So those were the two of the main things amongst many others that I'm certainly forgetting that kind of went into creating this mechanic. Also, another big thing was, again, this is early on, and the play expectation was, okay, tablet is on floor, cat is playing, human is over looking at the thing, seeing something cool happen. And a lot of times the cat would kind of obscure the vision of the fight because they're on top of the thing trying to hit the inputs. So the gems were just another way for the human to potentially be able to see the result of their cat's inputs, even if they weren't able to see everything else. So all of that together kind of came into this mechanic that you see now.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll add quickly is already at this stage of the game, we realized that because there's a lot of stuff going on screen, and again, the cat's purpose is to be hitting these little flying things as they come around, and obviously they need to be hitting a lot of these. So we had already in this mode designed a cat accessibility mode, which was we basically removed all of that visualization. So at its core, as clean as possible. Cat hits the stuff, and then you'll see some results of here. You can see the cast, you can see the health go down. But this was already starting to be a little bit of a slippery slope, right? I mean, if we really trying to get cats to engage as best as possible, but the way to do that is to remove all the gamified kind of cool
Right.
visuals and things from it, then that starts to be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I actually remember specifically why this was made. Like this wasn't even as much of a game design decision at this point, even though it ultimately ended up being one, as opposed to, okay, we started testing this with cats. We started going around to the shelters around Houston, any place that we could find more cats than just Lou, especially because Lou wasn't playing with the tablet.
Lou hates the tablet.
And
Yeah, he wouldn't touch it.
yeah, and when all of the stuff was on screen, the cats weren't playing it. So then we tried removing it to kind of just make it essentially be the old Friskies games with health bars. So there's like a game happening, and the cat started playing with it a little bit more. And I mean, just like a little bit more. It's not like they all of a sudden became superstars, but we actually started seeing some hits. So a conclusion we started to draw was, okay, all of this surrounding stuff that's meant to communicate game and strategy is blocking the cat's ability from being able to even start playing it. Uh-oh, something is going on here.
Yeah.
And another thing that I'll call it really quick is it's similar, but this is not something that we found out until later. And this is part of the difficulty in designing for humans and cats at the same time, right? Because we wanted to make something that was in theory fun for a person to play too, is to make this game design work well, we needed a ton of these little orbs flying around, right? Because the fun was hitting three blues in a row while not hitting the red, hitting three greens in a row without hitting a blue. And when we had less of those things on screen, it became a lot less fun for a person because it was very mindless. But the more things we had it on screen, the less likely it was for the cat to engage with it. So we are already started finding just the potential cursed problem of designing for people and cats at the same time. Is that really something that is attainable within like the exact same game mode? We
Yeah.
started to just kind of find that issue here.
I would say that this is probably the first point in the project that we're starting to like feel the cracks in the armor a little bit. It's like, all right, how is this actually going to work? Right? We're having a hard time getting cats to do. And like we went pretty hard with this testing. We also had like we were
Mm-hmm.
sending apps around to just online testers, get them to play and have them track their progress. And what we ultimately concluded was like, okay, yeah, like 100% of people can get their cat to touch the tablet when they put like food on the tablet. uh, but
And then they
the
hit it once or twice or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
and they
and the idea of like a compelling game session of cat versus cat was like very quickly, very rapidly starting to diminish, and we were like the way that I was justifying it in my head back then was like, oh, it's okay, people will train their cats. People are going to train their cats to be good at this, right? And then we took that idea, actually, probably clung to that one for way too long. Why don't we go ahead and show some of the footage from Studio Animal Services, like the string out? So, before we ever addressed um, this like tablet game issue, we took it very far, right? We continued development. We got rid of the gym drop mechanic to simplify things. We invested in our art. We invested in trying to create a little bit more of like a nuanced like game meta, some decision making for people. And we went so far as to even create a human version of the game. It's like cat mode and human mode. And what this kind of turned into was like a Fruit Ninja fighter type game. Drew, do you have any just like live game scene that you can show?
Yeah, I mean, I can pull
Um,
up the Unity project for it.
yeah, yeah. Um, and we'll see if this looks cool at all. All right, but this never actually addressed the core issue within the Gym Drop game, which was um, cats aren't playing with tablets the way that we want them to. And I
so
think,
another thing, another sorry,
go
keep going,
ahead, go
Ben.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, no, you jump in, jump in.
I was gonna say another thing you'll notice right off the bat is wow, characters are three dimensional. Another thing that we did realize, and this is part of the vision, kind of really from the beginning, was the power of if I can get a video of my cat actually playing with this thing and share it with someone, that could be really cool. And so the optimal version of that would have been, um, doing it in augmented reality, right? And so you can see your cat playing the game on the tablet, and then rather than just seeing the fight on the tablet potentially through your camera while filming them, we can superimpose our characters in the world, and then you can see the translation of their fight. And the two-dimensional characters didn't really lend themselves to AR very well. It wasn't impossible; it was doable, but it was kind of goofy looking. So another decision when accepting that the game design needed to be changed a little bit was also to move towards a 3D direction to allow for the augmented reality potential, which is now what you see here.
Yeah, yeah, and this was we built this thing to be pretty darn complete. Drewski's just turning off the cat accessibility mode,
Yeah, I was
so
definitely
you
gonna
get
highlight that was an interesting thing. So I'm gonna start off in human mode here. Similar mechanic to the previous version you saw, where each character has different amount of abilities. The different colors of the inputs translate to different moves. So these neutral ones are kind of your basic attack. You're meant to kind of spam these and be able to get them. These other colors are your specials. In the human mode, we have this kind of like spell shape casting sort of special thing here, where you can cut across the screen to actually cast your moves. Similar to the last one, these all have buffs and mechanics tied to them. So for the mech here, this blue is like a divine shield. So if once he puts it on, he takes reduced damage. Again, the cats aren't ever going to be, strategically doing these things, but the idea was to try and design mechanics, RNG based, that hey, if this popped up at the right time, you could have a hype moment in this fight. But yeah, as far as the human mode went, similar to what Campbell was saying earlier, we did a lot of inputs. They move pretty quick, so they're not super easy to touch. And then having this kind of cast mechanic for your big spells, making a little bit more challenge and delay between the stuff. Switching over to the cat mode, though, you can immediately see the change. Still kept our fight visualization unlike last time, but we put this kind of half opaque cover over it to try and make the input stand out a little bit more. And then in that Studio Animal Services video you saw, we actually, I wonder if we still have our settings in here for the cat
Yeah, the
Yeah.
input size and frequency. Large and low was the most successful.
And so you can immediately see the difference now of we make the inputs really big and we try and do a little bit less of them. Still looks like there's a ton on screen, but like this was the ideal way that we heard from animal trainers of how a cat would actually play this game. And if you can contrast the visualization of first off the human mode where you can see everything and you're playing actively and casting things versus a cat effectively walking around on this tablet. The screen recording visualization is not great because you don't get to see the cat. The best footage is filming a cat with a second camera while they're playing on the tablet. One other quick thing is just for the cat mode, they don't have to do the charge mechanic. They hit something, they'll cast it. We're just trying to squeeze as much as possible out of a couple cat inputs to see if they can finish a fight and create a hype moment.
Yeah. So I mean, like this was, in my opinion, still is, in my opinion, like the most complete version of anything that we've had up until today. I think the big like debate will forever be, should we have released this and seen what happens, or should we have made this pivot that we made? As I sit here today, and you guys know how I feel, I probably would have preferred to have released this and then build into the toy working with it. Because I think it just looks so sick, right? It's such beautiful art, and such a cool novel concept. And like I think checks the box of the greatest cat game in the world.
So
But
I'll actually kind of push back there a little bit because I think ultimately what we created here is actually just straight up a human game. I think the cat aspect of it just basically doesn't work. And the thing that we created that could in theory be fun to someone is what Drew's playing now of a Fruit Ninja Fighter spellcasting game with some move sets to figure out to try to defeat your enemy. But the the cat side, because we realized that like this version that was fun for humans just like technically just like could not even work for the cats. We tried to strip a lot of things back to make it more playable for them. But Drew, go to like a cat thing. But even then, there's still, you look at the cat games that exist on the market, they're all very deliberately one, maybe two very big and deliberate inputs that they're just meant to just touch and then go on to the next one. Where because we're trying to do this spellcasting game, there's like a ton. There's a ton of things everywhere, and that made it very, very difficult for the cats to be able to play with it. So you might be right that it was the world's best cat game, but I don't know if we can say it for sure because we're not sure the level of engagement with our game compared to the other games that existed because they were very clearly designed for cats, where ours is designed for people and then like hopefully cats can play, if that makes any sense.
yeah, I guess. I mean, it's I think wrong to say it was designed for people because it wouldn't exist, right, if not for cats.
The the
And we,
ultimate the ultimate design that it ended up on is a game made for people is what I mean. Not necessarily the track that got us there. But that's also part of the problem is that like okay, if this were just a person game, then we wouldn't have made it like this either. But anyways.
yeah, I know, I hear you. Yeah, I'll continue to feel like there's some like dev ideas in there that we can solve for. I just the real
Mhm,
point for me is more just like um, giving a product a chance to succeed, right?
mhm.
And just like letting it be out in the world and letting it breathe versus this like failure to give it life, right? Which like, oh fuck, that's the thing that continues to um, kind of keep wake me up in the middle of the night. You know, it's like, ah, fuck, are we ever gonna launch this thing?
Yeah, right.
Um, you know, um, and I certainly having like looked at some of the game ideas of this old, kitty fighter game, laid into some of the new tech that we have, like think that we could have built into toy with it. But would it have worked? Who knows? Probably not, right? Frankly, for all the reasons that we've outlined, because like the level of engagement we were getting from both people and animals was like just laughably low, right? So like
Right.
it was we were seeing in our testing that it really wasn't working for cats. Like you can show that Studio Animal Services string out again, Drew, because the most hilarious thing about this video, which is quite compelling, it's just cats playing our game. This guy's sitting at a little desk. He's like looking at it. Like, you guys are playing co-op.
Very cute.
Very cute, but like totally fabricated, right? These are cats that are trained to be in commercials, and like there's a person right off frame somewhere who's like holding a paddle that looks like a big abuse instrument, which is a terrible joke because these are wonderful trainers and great people, right? But they're literally like hurting these cats to do what they want them to do, and so like you can kind of
They're not hurting
tell
the cats. Just a disclaimer.
hurting
Yeah.
HERD, not
HERD,
HERT.
not yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not hurt. They're not cracking the whip on these cats. I hope not. No, certainly not. We didn't observe any of that. So anyway, this and all this conversation, it happens in January, right? Are we going to do this or are we not? Um, and then there was this like moment where we got so off the rails with our conversation. We're like, what if it's just instead of making a game, we just made a stat tracker? Remember talking about that? What if we just had like a thing to put on the cat's collar and see how many steps it takes? It's like, yeah, I guess we could make that, but that's just like you want to talk about deviating from the original vision. Um, but the last thing that I want to show, and something that like we talk about as early as our very first pitch that we didn't get to until after we made the decision in January that we didn't want to launch this tablet game. Let's show that Octane video. Um, this was for me the first real aha moment, right? Like there were plenty of moments as we went through the development where I was like, oh, that's sick, that looks so good, right? But this was the first time that I was like, this is the way that cats will play video games in the future, right? And what this guy's done is he's just set up a sensor and he's hooked it up to this toy, and when you hit the toy, you get a signal, right? And all of a sudden, the world kind of opened up to us with this big innovation, right? And that conversation we're going to mostly plan for next episode, right? Which we have on the schedule for Thursday. So, you guys have any comments about any of that stuff? Any reactions to the sort of the journey and how it's turned and how we've gotten to where we are?
Yeah. For me, it is it's it's just hardware is difficult, right? But it's a shame that we didn't have this toy to really work and develop with and design with until August of this past year. And so much time and effort since then has gone towards um, just other things that I look back on the build that we just showed off, the multiple builds we just showed off, and there's so much in there, and they're so deep, and a lot of time went into them, and I just wish we had that same amount of time with this ultimate product that is so much more engaging, not only for cats but also people, right? A big a big aha moment for me, not to spoil for next episode, we can go into more detail, but like when I we had this original vision of a game so fun for cats that people would want to play too. For me, it was recognizing that playing with the toy and watching and having that cooperative experience with your cat actually being a fun thing, because I'm not a cat person, so I haven't experienced that myself. But once I saw that that was a fun experience for people and the cats are really engaged with it, it's like, there we go, we've got it. Yes, the video that you're showing, right? Like you can see the how it's a cooperative game between Drew and this cat. And once that I realized that was fun, I was like, okay, here we've got the cat game that is so fun for cats that people would want to play too. And it's not only that it took us a long time to get to the toy solution, because we actually started making that progress towards that like in January of 2022, I guess. But then the steps required to actually get that thing in hand to really design and test with, it's just a long process because of
Yeah,
hardware.
it really is.
And if we had that same, again, that was only like less than 6 months ago, right? Like that was really not that long ago. And just the same amount of time, development time dedicated towards that as we had with the initial software side. Um, who knows? And we have all these things designed out on our whiteboards that we just haven't been able to put into the game yet. But it's just eye opening for me to see the amount of content that was in those games compared to what we have now, and it's just because because we only had our product, our toy, not that long ago. So.
Well said. Condog, I know the storm's been ravaging you on your part of town. Are you here?
I think he might not be. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm listening
Oh.
in. It's just been like half robot half the time, and I just
Oh
get kicked.
dear.
So I'm a little nervous to chime in and ruin the flow.
Well, here we are near the end. What thoughts do you have after listening in to all of today's episode?
Ooh, thoughts. I mean, it's nice to kind of see all the decisions that were made and kind of the path that got us to where we're at. Personally, it makes me more proud also of like where we've ended up. I think I'm on the other side of you, Ben. Like, I'd rather not put out a product that I don't necessarily believe in or I don't think is solving the problems that we think it's solving. I'd rather try to get it right. Obviously, there's a balance there with relative to funding and how much time you have and everything. But um, I'm just proud of like what we've accomplished in the game that we've created.
Yeah, I mean, as you should be, right? And we made the decision to go this way, and we don't second guess it. I just, I look back and say that was one moment when, like, I guess the only real honest and straightforward way to say it is that was a moment that defined our ability to have launched and worked on a live product, right? Like
Yeah.
we will not do that now together unless in these next couple of weeks we find tremendous traction and we launch a Kickstarter and we have a great deal of success, right? But now we're attempting to launch on the promise of a future project or product, right? So that's kind of like that does a pretty nice job of kind of like laying the undertone for like, oh, the conflict that exists ahead of us, right? Because that's what that is what's ahead. And yeah, man, I think I love the idea of little kitty competitions. I hope that we get the chance to create at least one before we're all done with this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that does kind of get us to the end of today's discussion. And most of it's kind of been like the path to get us here. So where are we? Why don't we roll the video and take a look at the state of Kitty Arcade today?
There we go. Still alive. Still alive. One more. One more. Come on. Come on. Oh, so close.
This was really a great experience for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Like, what is this
Feeling this kind of
camera?
cafe too.
I think it's very cute that you're able to like have your cat catch fish. Like that's the theme of the game. So I enjoyed that aspect of it.
All right. Great clip. And a great show. That does sort of do it for everything we've got on the calendar for today. We're going to be back in just a couple of days. We'll be back on Thursday. And for the Thursday episode, we'll be talking about some of those aha moments. What were the moments where we felt like we really stumbled into something, figured something out, solved a problem, and progressed towards the ultimate goal of releasing the world's greatest video game for cats, one that's so good that we'll want to play too. Any final thoughts from the squad? Well, in that
None for
case,
me.
I think it's a very simple call to action time. If you guys would like to support the project, the best way you can do it is by following us in all of the places. That's Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Kitty Arcade Game. And if you head over to www.kittyarcadegame.com, you'll be able to sign up for our newsletter. Next time, we'll be talking about aha moments and finding the fun. This has been the Kitty Cast. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, y'all.
I want you to think before you speak. I want you to think before you speak. Unless you know what you say.
Okay, we out?